talk about what trauma is? What is trauma?
Yes.
I didn't have the definition.
Yeah, he kind of over it.
What did he say?
I didn't get a hold of it right now.
It was the one that it was about internal mechanisms and external the inability to have those mechanisms in place to deal with an event.
Trauma going on. Yeah. So, when I was in high school, I was at a choir thing with my best friend. We were in the mall. It was right around Thanksgiving-ish, and we were putting up the Christmas tree in a 2-story mall in Corpus Christi. And there was a guy up the top of the ladder, and I don't know what happened. We were standing over here looking at some stuff, and I heard a sound, and I turned, and he had fallen from the top of that ladder at the top of the mall all the way down to the floor.
Ooh.
And neither one of us said it. We just were like, and then we just went on. But ever since then, heights, man, I can't do heights. And I get close to the edge, I'm like, nope, absolutely not. And so that trauma, that inability to deal with what happened to that guy, and I never could find anything. I looked in the newspaper for what happened, I could never find anything. Has to this day, 40-something years later, still, I just get a pit in my stomach whenever I get close to the edge of anything. Empire State Building, forget it. My girls were all, I'm like, no, I'll be back over here if you need me. And so I just can't handle. Does anybody want to share an experience similar? Go ahead, Sydney.
So I cannot do ice skating.
Okay.
Because I think it was in either 4th or 5th grade, we took when Lubbock still had an ice skating rink. We took a field trip to the ice skating rink. And we were skating around, having fun. And then all of a sudden, there was 2 boys, they weren't paying attention, and they crashed into each other. And they ended up falling on the ice and busting their heads open. Blood, ever since then, no ice skating.
For sure.
No.
For sure. We were in LA last summer when they had the earthquakes. And so Jonna, I don't know how many of you know Jonna, we were there, and I didn't even know anything was happening. She grabs my arm, I'm like, what is going on? And my son-in-law across from me, he goes, it's happening. And I'm like, what? And then you realize all of a sudden that the chandeliers are shaking like this, and I look around the restaurant, nobody. Everybody's just eating, the waiters are going, everything, and I'm like, man, nobody even notices that this is going on. But Jonna, she's like, before that happened, my world was stable, the earth was stable, it doesn't move, and now I know there's a possibility that the earth can move at any given moment, and she said it traumatized her. So it was really interesting. But I thought, we do the same here. We live in tornado country. There's a tornado warning, we go, okay. And people that come in from other parts of the country, they're like, a tornado warning? What do we do? You just wait and see what's going to happen. So this is how, so we have ways to deal with trauma. So those of us who've grown up, tornado country, we go, it's no big deal. Those that come in fresh are traumatized. So this is how trauma works. So I'm going to show you this video, hopefully. I'll stop it.
Dr. Switzer?
Yes, come in. I'm just washing my hands.
I'm Catherine Bigman. Janet Carlisle referred me.
Oh, yes. Fear of being buried alive in a box.
Yes, that's me. Should I lay down?
Oh, no, we don't do that anymore. Just have a seat. And let me tell you a bit about our billing. I charge $5 for the first 5 minutes. And then absolutely nothing after that. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Too good to be true, as a matter of fact.
Well, I can almost guarantee you that our session won't last the full 5 minutes. Now, we don't do any insurance billing, so you would either have to pay in cash or by check.
Wow. Okay.
And I don't make change.
All right.
And go.
Go.
Well, tell
What?
me about the problem that you wish to address.
Oh, okay. Well, I have this fear of being buried alive in a box. I start thinking about being buried alive and I begin to panic.
Has anyone ever tried to bury you alive in a box?
No, but truly thinking about it does make my life horrible. I mean, I can't go through tunnels or be in an elevator or in a house, anything boxy.
So what you're saying is you're claustrophobic.
Yes, that's it.
All right, well, let's go, Catherine. I'm going to say 2 words to you right now. I want you to listen to them very, very carefully. Then I want you to take them out of the office with you and incorporate them into your life.
Well, shall I write them down?
Well, if it makes you comfortable, it's just 2 words. We find most people can remember them.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, here they are. Stop it!
I'm sorry?
Stop it!
Stop it?
Yes, S-T-O-P, new word, I-T.
So, what are you saying?
You know, it's funny. I say 2 simple words, and I cannot tell you the amount of people who say exactly the same thing you're saying. I mean, this is not Yiddish, Catherine. This is English. Stop it.
So, I should just stop it.
There you go. I mean, you don't want to go through life being scared of being buried alive in a box, do you? I mean, that sounds frightening.
Yes.
Then stop it.
I can't. I mean, it's been with me since childhood.
No, we don't go there. Just stop it.
So, I should just stop being afraid of being buried alive in a box.
You got it. Good girl. Well, it's only been 3 minutes, so that will be $3.
Actually, I only have a 5, so
Well, I don't make change.
then I guess I'll take the full 5 minutes.
Fine. All right. Well, what other problems would you like to address?
I'm bulimic. I stick my fingers down my throat.
Stop it! What are you, nut of some kind? Don't do that.
But I'm compelled to. My mom used to call me fatty.
No, we don't go there.
But I've been having this dream.
No, we don't go there either.
But my horoscope did say...
We definitely don't go there. Just stop it. What else?
Well, I have self-destructive relationships with men.
Stop it! You want to be with a man, don't you?
Yes.
Well, then stop it. Don't be such a big baby.
I wash my hands a lot.
That's all right.
It is?
I wash my hands all the time. There's a lot of germs out there. Yeah, don't worry about that one.
I'm afraid to drive.
Well, stop it! How are you going to get around? Get in the car and drive, you kook. Stop it!
You stop it! You stop it!
What's the problem, Kathy?
I don't like this. I don't like this therapy at all. You're just telling me to stop it.
And you don't like that?
No, I don't.
So you think we're moving too fast? Is that it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
All right, then let me give you 10 words that I think will clear everything up for you. You want to get a pad and a pencil for this one?
All right.
Are you ready? All right, here are the 10 words. Stop it or I'll bury you alive in a box!
Humorous, but sometimes that's what we want to tell our kids, right? They're doing something, some kind of behavior, and we just want to say, stop it. Why are you doing that? Just stop it. So what we're talking about this time is how the brain develops and how come they can't always just stop it, like she said. So there's a doctor named Dan Siegel. He has some really, really great stuff, TED Talks and all kinds of trainings about the brain. And he did a hand model like this. And he said, this looks like your brain. And so he said, this represents your spinal cord, your brain stem, the amygdala, the cortex, and the prefrontal cortex, okay? So when you're born, as you're developing, you're still in utero, all this is a developing brain stem first, then amygdala. I have to look at my notes because I can't remember all this technical brain stuff. But, so the spinal cord transmits things from your body, emotions, all kinds of things through your body. The brain stem takes that information and regulates breathing, digestion, heartbeat, that kind of stuff. It also creates the flight, fight, freeze, or faint responses that come when we're threatened. The amygdala, the limbic system, appraises the meaning of things, whether they're significant or not, whether we're in danger or not, whether just makes sense of what's going on with the information that the brainstem has given us in the spinal cord. And then the cortex kind of maps everything. It takes all this information that we've learned as we're growing, and it maps wires, connect all these neuron type things that connect in your brain, and makes a path for you so that when you brush your teeth, you know how to do it the next time, because you brushed your teeth before. Next time it says, oh yeah, okay, you put toothpaste on, put the toothbrush in your mouth. Your cortex maps all those things that you do, how to eat, how to dress yourself, all those things that we do normally. So then the prefrontal cortex is the kind that has your cognitive thinking. So you can go through and you can figure out, oh, this happened, so this is going to happen. So kind of consequences and all those types of things. Your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until you are 26 years old. How many of you are under 26 years old? Your prefrontal cortex is still developing. So you're still learning how to make sense of all the things that are going on inside your brain. So our kids' brains, when you're born, let me go back to this. When you're born, you're an infant, and you feel a need. So you have a need felt. What are the needs an infant feels? Hunger. Diaper change.
Attention.
One more. Sleep, right? Yes. They're sleepy. Okay. So when they feel this need, they express the need. So they have need expressed. How does an infant express that need? Cry. Okay. And then the mom, normally, the dad, says, oh, what's the matter? Are you hungry? Are you sleepy? And they try to figure out. Eventually, mom knows the differences in the cries. Dads know the differences in the cries. They figure out, oh, it's time for your bottle. You must be hungry. Well, it's time for your nap. Let me put you down. And so that need was met, and then a bond is formed. So we've developed a trust. I know this caregiver, whoever it is, mom, dad, whoever, is going to meet my need. When this need is met, these chemicals are released, dopamine, serotonin, and there's one more, oxytocin are released. And it makes this feel good things like, oh, I just love my mom. She always takes care of me. She always meets my needs. Until the next time, and then we feel another need. So we just continue to do this cycle all through life, really. And as long as this need is met, everything's good. So what happens when we come along and we're 2, 3, 4 years old, and we're in a neglectful home, and we're hungry, and there's nobody there to give us food? So we've felt a need. We may express a need, but what happens? It's not, right? It's not met. So this cycle's disrupted. And so then what do we learn to do? So then our brain says, okay, mom, dad's not going to meet this need anymore, so I've got to figure out a way to meet it myself, right? So So we have kids that are 3 and 4 years old scrounging around in the pantry or in the house or wherever and trying to find a way to find food, right? So this whole thing's disrupted. So they develop a path that's different from somebody in a home where this need is constantly met. And so then what if they suffer abuse of some kind and they feel a need and they express the need again? So then they learn how to deal with the abuse, the trauma that they did not have ways to navigate life. They have to figure out those ways, right? Okay. So we make good decisions based on how our brain is developing, right? We have people that teach us how to make good decisions. Here's what you do. You clean up your room. You eat all your meal. Just tell me some things that you learned as a child. Your parents teach you how to make up your bed. Your parents teach you how to get dressed for school. All these things that as a normal home, all these needs are met, and those pathways. So we get our kids here, and they don't come from this. And so their brains have been disrupted, and trauma has rewired their brains. One of the things that the cortex does is it makes harmony of everything that's going on. So when you have something that's frightened you, if you run into a dog that's you think might attack you, or Ben loves to just throw snakes out in the middle of training, or just he'll throw a bag out and tell you there's a snake in it. So those things that you've learned over time how to deal with that. I was going somewhere with this and I lost my train of thought. You've made good decisions on how to handle the trauma that you have developed internal internal ways to navigate this so that you're not overwhelmed with the trauma. But our kids don't have that. And so Ben obviously talked about some of the things. This thing about sanctuary is a lot of these overlap. And so give me some examples of the way our kids deal with stress. Okay, so we're going to isolate ourselves, right? We're going to dissociate. Dissociation is one of the ways. I'm just going to pretend like that's somebody, and I'm not even in that body. I'm just watching what's happening.
Anger.
What? I'm sorry, anger? Mm-hmm. Hitting, right? They're very aggressive behavior sometimes. Crying.
Telling us they hate us.
Right, sure. They're going to push you away, right? One of the main things that they do is see how committed you are, right? So you come in your first few days and you're like, oh, this is great. We're going to be friends. We're going to have a good time. We're going to learn like that. And they're like, I don't know. Let's see if you can handle this tantrum, right? Yeah, let's see if you can handle if I do this. So you're talking about bedwetting. I don't remember who said that. Our kids don't have control over a lot of the things that they are made to do, especially, number one, the fact that they're here. They didn't ask to be here. They don't really necessarily want to be here. They want to be safe, but honestly, they would probably rather be with mom, even in an unsafe environment, than to be here a lot of the times. And so they don't have a lot of control over what they get to do. We tell them, here's the rules. You have to do this. This is your room. This is, all these things that we impose on them. And so they find ways to take back control. And so one of those is the bedwetting. It's the, you can't make me go to the bathroom. And so it's not only bedwetting, it's the pooping as well. So we have a lot of kids that they can't control it. I think at a time, because of the way the brain develops, they were able to hold that or not hold it, And then over time, because you lose coordination of those muscles, because you've chosen to poop, I don't want to, anyway, then it comes a point where you can't even control that anymore. So it just happens whether you want it to happen or not. Eating, you know, I mean, of course, all kids, I mean, even in a home with two parents and, you know, eat your meal, no, I don't want to. This is a battle, a power struggle over who's going to have control over this. And so you need to realize when they push back at you, it's not always about, in fact, it's very rarely about you. It's almost always about control and a power struggle. And so we need to find ways to bring that harmony back to their brain. Sorry, this is for Teresa Mansfield. Usually does this one, and it's my favorite one, and I really hate to mess it up because she always does such a great job. One of the things she talks about when she does this hand model is that so our kids, because this amygdala, which is kind of the flight, fight, freeze, or faint model, because the stress that our kids are under, they are in a constant state of hyperarousal. So everything is conceived as a threat, whether it's really a threat or not. And so they're constantly, that amygdala is constantly going off, and everything is just out of control. And so everything they see as a threat, possibly, whether it is or not. I was thinking about this last night. I was thinking about one of the things that it talks about is that they disregard like actual threats for a perceived threat. I was thinking about one girl that we used to have that ran all the time, and so one day Ben ran, and she ran out onto the highway here, and I'm thinking, I mean, she's actually in a dangerous situation, but that wasn't even in her, that wasn't why she was running. She didn't even perceive that she was actually on the highway with Ben, and that part of the danger didn't even permeate her brain. You know, she was thinking about, I need to run because this staff said something to me. And so she ran out onto the highway into real danger, which she didn't even recognize the fact that happened. So we have those kind of things. They can't distinguish between perceived threat and an actual threatening situation. So, let me see. Ben said, I was talking to him about this, he said he used to have a kid that whenever there was kind of stress going on in the cottage, that kid would just get up and walk out. And it just freaked the house parent out. He's like, where does he go? What does he do? And he said he would be gone like an hour and he would come back. And so they sat down and talked to him. So why do you just leave like that? He said, well, when my dad would come home and he was angry and yell, he said, we knew we were fixing to get hit with a belt or fist or whatever. He said, so we would just climb out the window and be gone and wait an hour. He would calm down, we could come back. He said, so when the house dad comes in, raises his voice, he said, immediately I'm like, I need to get out of here or I'm fixing to get hit. So they have these things that, I mean, we just don't even know. I just think about it all the time as far as the way they respond to things. We just don't even know what they've been through. And I don't work in the cottage, but I see them come in, I watch them, I hear stories from and you can probably tell me who's been here the longest? Keely, maybe you. Do you have any stories of that type of thing that's happened in the Mason? Can you think of
I have
anything?
a kid that shuts down.
They just
won't talk, won't answer your questions. It's hard for them to leave, so I don't have anybody that ever leaves because we're pretty much
Right.
locked down
Right.
most of the time. But I have one kid that screams a lot every time he doesn't get his way. Just high-pitched scream.
right.
But that's about it.
So that's some kind of defense mechanism. That made me think of something. lost it. So when we see these behaviors, it's just so easy. It's just so easy to ask, what's wrong with you? And the question that we always need to ask instead is, what has happened to you? So taking the time, it's so hard, and I understand this. It's so hard when you're one staff or you're two staff and you have 8 kids, or you have, there's 14 in the Mason, and of course they have more staff, and you're trying to take care of this one and this one and this one, and try to actually figure out what's going on with this kid and why they're acting the way they are. One of the things that Teresa Mansfield talks about is of course distraction is good, taking their mind off whatever's going on at the time, but she says that they used bubble gum, and they would just have a big thing of like double bubble, and whenever a kid was escalated, they would give them a piece of bubble gum, and she said there's something about that chewing motion that makes them refocus and kind of calm down. So I just wish all of our cottages just had a big bowl of double bubble, and so that when they're escalated, you can give them that, and that helps. Just that chewing motion, something about the chewing motion that helps get their mind off of it. So to go with, let me see, Brian. So trauma is the result of an overwhelming amount of stress that exceeds one's ability to cope, or integrate emotions involved with that experience. So they have acute stress, chronic stress, toxic stress that has happened over and over and over in their lives. Chronic stress produces chronic hyperarousal, the hypersensitivity to even a minor threat, extremist thinking. They respond to many things as threat to life, and they have aggression and impulse control. Attention to perceived threat while ignoring the less threatening but important information. Interference with normal emotional and cognitive development. Emotional states too intense to handle. Helplessness and need for control. So then we have, I know what I was going to say a while ago. One of the things that our kids are not used to, especially ones that have been neglected more than abused, is just that someone telling them no. So the fact that, no, you can't have that right now. They're not ever told. I mean, we think they're deprived of everything, but they're actually, a lot of them are not used to anybody telling them, no, you can't have that, because there was no one there to actually monitor what they were doing. So if they wanted to go get a Coke and there was a Coke in the fridge, they just went and got it, because nobody monitored whether they had a Coke at 8 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night or whenever. And so a lot of them are not used to being told no. Some of them are very helpless. Some of them want you to do everything for them because they're just not used to doing anything for themselves. There's different attachment styles. The avoidant child is this child avoids caregivers and feelings. I don't know if y'all can see that. Ambivalent, this child feels separation anxiety when separated from the caregiver and does not feel reassured when the caregiver returns. Disorganized, this child displays fear, contradictory behaviors or affect, freezing or dissociation, approach that is neither clearly avoidant or ambivalent. And then secure, this child feels he can rely on caregivers to attend to his needs emotionally and emotional support.
So every year, one of my favorite Halloween traditions is to shut off my lights when trick-or-treaters come and pretend I'm not home. And I also like to send my rider Amy through a haunted house, and this year I sent her to Not Scary Farms Halloween Haunt. And here's what happened.
Hi, Ellen. I'm at Not Scary Farms Halloween Haunt. It's that time of year again, where you send me through a haunted house and I lose a year off of my life. But this year I decided to bring a friend. Jeannie.
Hi.
You ready?
Ready.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Trick or treat! Okay. Okay.
Oh my god. I don't want to do it.
We're good,
okay.
we're good.
Okay. Ah! Get away from me!
Okay. No, big boy, go away. Hey, oh my, it's honking in my ear, Amen. Here, come on.
Oh my God.
How are you doing? Are you okay?
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah.
Something is gonna
Something
jump out
is
of
totally gonna come out. Oh my God!
It's twins! I don't like twins! I don't like twins! I don't like twins! I need to catch my breath. Something's bad's gonna.
Hang on, go back.
Go back!
Wait, somebody want to take a breath! One
Go
breath.
back! That is tacky. Leave us alone.
That is
Okay, we're good. We're good. Okay, we're good. We're good. Oh my God! Don't bite me!
Okay.
Oh God! Don't bite me! You're doing so good. Back to you, Ellen. I'm sorry, Jeannie.
So they knew what was coming, right? Or they didn't know exactly what was coming, but they knew when they went in there that it was going to be something like that. But our kids have lived through things that they don't know has been coming at them. And it's just this constant state like this. This lasted, less than 5 minutes. And their constant life is like this. And so they're just hypersensitive, hyper aroused. Every little thing that they see just causes them to be out of control. Some of our kids are worse than others. I can think of a group of 6 right now that are just the really, really well-behaved kids that we have out here, and then I can think of some that are just really, you just can't do anything with. And so we just have to realize we need to, you tell me, you're in the cottage, you tell me, do you have time to sit down with each kid and talk to them at all? Is there not any time in the day where you could sit for 5 minutes with each kid? Is it just impossible? If the only staff in there? So even at bedtime? How do you do bedtime? Tell me how you do that.
For cottage A specifically, they each do showers, and then there's different bedtimes. So the youngest one goes to bed at 8:30, and then 8:45, and then 9 o'clock, and then the older three are at 10.
So is there any time in there where you could have 5 minutes with them individually?
Sometimes they'll want to talk to me while I'm in the living room, because I've been over there by myself quite a bit, so I can't exactly leave them unattended
Right.
very long.
Right.
So
Right.
there are some that will either want to talk to me in the living room or just be in the doorway of their bedroom. And then at cottage 2, the 6-year-old, Marco specifically, he is a struggle to get to bed. But I guess kind of our little bonding moment in the last, 2 weekends ago, I think, was I read him a book, typed him in, did a prayer, and he was asleep. That was probably one of the easiest times getting him to go to sleep.
Okay.
So, but just, I don't know, it just, There's time, it's a struggle some days depending on if you're with another staff or by yourself.
Right.
You have the 6-year-old that's throwing a temper tantrum for 20 minutes because he doesn't want to go to bed.
So think about that, why they don't want to go to bed. I mean, you have to think about the trauma involved in bedtime for all of these kids, for a huge majority of them. You've dealt a lot with the teenagers, right? So even more difficult for them to open up to
Right.
you and to develop that kind of relationship. How have you done that?
For the most part, I'll tell them, like, I don't know anything about your past. You don't know anything about my past. So we're right here, right now. So what are we dealing with right now, and how can we go forward?
Mhm.
And sometimes they'll talk. and
Right.
Sometimes they just listen.
Right.
Sometimes they just.
But you've been in there a long time, or you're not with the same kids now.
Right.
But so time, right?
Yeah.
It takes a long time to develop that trust
Right.
relationship. So you've been in the college 2 weekends, you said, Audrey? So how has that gone
It's
for
good.
you?
I mean, I've had different days. I've had time to, talk to different kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's not spending, minutes of every day with every child by
Right.
themselves.
Right.
But, the first weekend I was in 8, last weekend I was in 2, but they play together a lot.
Right. There's
And
yeah.
so, even though I was in 8 the first weekend, I still got to know the other kids, and
Right.
It's just kind of different, different times of day and different days. I was able to spend time with, as you were saying, like Marco,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
those boys. But some of them, open up, and some of them open up, but it's through playing.
Right.
It's the way that,
Right. Right.
we play together,
Right.
we play basketball, and they're talking and whatnot, so.
It's a lot less threatening for somebody to, they've always said that when you have a really serious conversation to like go for a drive or do something where you're not face to face with somebody like that, because it's a little less intimidating, so.
Like me and Araceli were like on the swings.
Mhm.
She was talking to me.
Right.
We were swinging, so I
Right.
was looking at
So
her.
you're not, it's not that face to face. That's very hard for a lot of people.
Real swing for like 2 hours.
Real shit, really?
She loves to swing. She will spend all day on a swing if she can. Yes.
She's
Get out of her bike.
Sweetheart. So one of the things we're trying to do, we have all this trauma that has affected their brain and affected the way that their brains are wired. And so what we want to do is bring harmony back to that, to bring healing to that. So the tool in this toolbox, this is one of the things that poor emotional management leads to, substance abuse. So one thing I want to talk about, substance abuse, is that we need to see that as a coping mechanism. This is an escape for them, right? So this is how they learned to deal with what they've been through. They smoke weed or they drink alcohol or whatever it is, but it's an escape for them. Sometimes their poor management leads to violence, cutting, the risk taking I was talking about earlier about running out onto the highway, and so we change our question from what's wrong with you to what's happened to you. And we recognize that the behaviors are symptoms of the trauma and not, their survival skills. This is how they've learned to survive. So what are some examples? Jonna came to help me out here. Tell us some of the ways you've seen kids cope with their trauma.
Well, I just heard you talking about smoking,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a big thing. depends on age a lot of times. So like younger ones, you'll see just a lot of defiance. A lot of times is the way that it manifests itself. So you feel like you're asking a super simple question of like, can you do your chore or take the trash out or whatever, and they just shut down. They're just not going to do anything. And there's really, a lot of times there's not an explanation for it, so you just have to go back and remember they've been through a lot. I don't know what they've been through. I don't know if you've already said this, but they're not a bad kid. It's just the way that their brain is coping with everything that's happened to them. So you're trying to do something simple, and it just gets turned into this complicated thing. And so the more that you push back on it, the more that it's going to just escalate. So that's why a lot of times you just have to be like, we're going to take a step. We're going to take a step back. We're going to try this again and go from there. It's not that you have to address, like, I know you've been through trauma and this is why you're doing this. You just have to know it in the way that you're acting towards them. So that's one way. For younger ones, for older ones, especially right now, like we said, smoking is a big thing.
Well, and then just, I think, getting into fights.
Yeah.
Just that aggressive bullying. It's just a way.
Well, yeah, it's
just
like
a way to let out anger, right?
Yeah, you said survival skills. So a lot of them have maybe not been living on the streets, but they have a lot of street smarts because of the way that they've grown up, and so they're going to be manipulative in the way that they're approaching things, and they're going to be aggressive, and they don't understand why that's not okay when you're trying to explain you can't do this, you can't fight, you can't whatever. It takes a long time to rewire the brain and say, oh, this is not an appropriate response. I have to figure out how to do this in a nonviolent way. So it takes a long time to work through that.
What about one thing I noticed common is they constantly, well not constantly, but often they'll instigate, instigate situations, I guess.
Yeah.
Especially on the ones that they know get upset easily.
Right.
I've noticed.
Know how to push the buttons?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a common one.
Yeah. So I think that has a lot to do with like survivor skills type things. But also, some of it, I don't know if you said this, but I talked about
You just
this.
say is correct.
Some of it is just like when you live with people you're not
Used to.
yeah, when you're not related to, and it's just weird, and so you're just like pushing buttons and all that. And some of it is normal stuff that you would do with
Some of
siblings.
it's to people you have lived with,
Right,
and you
so
know
a lot of
exactly which
times-
button to push.
Yeah. So some of it, like, you have to be, I don't know, you have to realize that most of what happens is trauma, but some of it is also just
The situation.
just a kid,
Just
just
kids.
a normal kid behavior. But it's more, so I would say it's more like when you start noticing recurrent behaviors, that you're like, well, that's probably not normal, because sometimes instigating is normal, but if it's something that's happening
Over and over.
all the time, then you can realize, okay, well, that's probably how they're dealing with their trauma. That's the way it's manifesting itself in this kid, but that's not the same for every kid. So.
Anybody else? Thing you want to share? So, what in sanctuary? Let me see if this is the next one. Enacting out child as a stressed out child. So just realizing that when they act out, most of the time they're stressed about something. So trying to find out what that stressor is, instead of just being punitive, or instead of trying just to manage behavior, actually trying to figure out what's causing that. And a stressed out staff is not going to calm down a stressed out child. So you have to keep your emotions in check. And I know easier said than done when you're dealing with a stressed out child. But I think it helps to realize it's not personal, and that there's a reason for them to act this way. Help keep you out of the power struggle or the argument or whatever you want to say as far as dealing with them. So if you can keep your emotions in check. That helps deal with them.
So I'll say, one thing is, it's hard when I feel like most of you, if all of you, I don't know, except for you two, are relief staff or Mason staff. So it's really hard when you come in on the weekends and you have no idea what happened during the week. So you could have had, same with the shift, you come off, you're 2 days off and you come in on a shift and you're like, well, what happened? So you could have a kid who had a final court happen or who had, had some really bad news, and you're coming in on the weekend and you have no idea. And so you're like, why is this? This is not normal behavior for so-and-so. Why is this happening? Then that would be something that I would talk to the house parent about, or talk to me or Heather about, and say, hey, this kid is acting differently than normal, so did something happen that I should know about that's really affected him? So just asking questions, and overall just knowing, I'll talk about this when I train next week, but knowing the kid's past helps a lot too. So if you always have access, you can read, like they all have affidavits that explain why they got removed. And so you're always welcome to ask your case manager, the case manager for that cottage, hey, can I read it, or can you give me just an overview of what this kid came to care for? That way you can start seeing different ways that you think their trauma is showing itself in their behavior.
You can get to that through Kaleido.
Yes, most of the time it's on Kaleido Care. There's occasions where it hasn't been uploaded or whatever, but it is on there. So that's probably what we would direct you to. So when I worked in the Mason, I used to read their history and reason for removal all the time because it's just really, really helpful. So, and like you said, not taking things personal is like always my advice to anybody who starts that I'm talking to. Like, this kid is going to do all they can to make you mad, to push your buttons. And so when you can recognize that that's what they're doing and take a step back and be like, well, okay, this is not about me. I know it feels personal, but this is not about me.
Especially when they call you something. I heard you got called the good one the other day. So
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, so they're going to do everything they can to make you mad so that you'll explode at them, and then and then they have a reason to say, well, this staff did this or whatever. You gotta take a step back, and that's what a safety plan is. Is that what you're about to
So
talk
we're
about?
going to talk about safety plans.
Okay.
So, I don't know.
It's funny that Dinah the other day she had separated herself from everybody, which is what she
Right,
does.
right. It is.
And so I just kind of let her sit alone, but I walked over to try to get her to come in cottage. She looked at me, she said, get your old saggy skinned self out of here. And I said, well, at least you're being honest.
Yeah, exactly. And those girls, I have 3 daughters, and so they love being together. And so those sisters love to be together. Mm-hmm. And it's really upsetting to them when they're not. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big part of their trauma, is that, they can't all be together whenever they want to be together. So that's a really big trauma trigger for them. How many of you have a safety plan card? Oh, good. Who needs one? So safety plans. I'll give everyone. Safety plans are for our kids, but guess what? They're also for us, because as much as we say don't take it personally, sometimes it's rough, right? Sometimes it hurts. And so we need to have a way to step back and take a breather. I don't know whether to start with you or start with the kid. Let's start with the kids. So sitting down with them, and I would say music is probably like 95% of the first thing on people's safety plan, right? Because just like Jimmy this morning comes in and he brings the music, and it puts everybody in a certain kind of mood. So if you can get them, maybe you're better at this than I am. As far as like what's available to them, they all have iPods, they all have...
No, so safety plans can get complicated with kids because they try to put things on there that they want to always have access to, and you can't always give them access to it. So that's why when I sit down with my kids, I always try to say, video games don't count. You can't put video games on there. So it feels wrong that you're limiting them, but you always have a reason for it. So they don't all have access to music, but I still let them put that on there because usually there's a way they can find it. Whether it's like, okay, let's go sit in the van for a few minutes and you can listen to whatever you want to listen to. But yeah, you do have to be careful with kids because they're like, well, it's on my safety plan, and you can't necessarily let them do that. So you just have to be careful and make sure that there are items on their safety plan that you can always let them do. So that's not necessarily up to y'all, it's up to house parents or whoever makes the safety plan with them, but just knowing that sometimes you're limited in it, and they'll try to make sure that you let them do it even though they know you can't. It's a whole mind game.
I think walking is also usually on there, but sometimes they can't just like, you can't just leave the cottage and go out and walk by yourself, right?
Right.
So, so those things are helpful. So trying to actually, and it's what we talked about earlier about the social learning type thing, coming up with a solution, letting them really help with input on that, but guiding and making sure that it is something that's going to be workable when they're in the moment. And then when they're in the moment, saying, hey, let's take a time out, let's do something on your safety plan. And I feel like that's probably easier said
Well,
than
so
done.
I'm thinking about Dinah. So when she is upset, she doesn't remember what's on her safety plan. So a lot of times when you're in the moment with the kid, you need to say what's going to make you feel better right now. So just make a new safety plan while you're sitting there talking, and that way you do have control of saying, well, I can let you take a walk, but I'm going to have to be 6 feet behind you, or whatever. I'm going to have to go with you. So I think that's the way that you don't have to be like, no, if it's not written down on this safety plan, can't do it. So just coming up with things in the moment of what is going to help you calm down right now.
So for Araceli, it would be swinging, right? That'd probably be number 1 on her safety plan. So you just, again, this just takes time. It takes time to get to know the kids and time to really figure out what works with them. I mean, it's just like having, I don't know how many of you have kids, but it's just like having your own kids. And so what works with this one doesn't necessarily work with this one. And so like Aaron, riding a bike is his thing. That's what he does all day long. Yeah, or to go talk to Miss Jonna. And she just lets him sit most of the time. So working with them, they should all have, I don't know if they have these or they just have a sheet in their.
I know at Cottage 2, they have a little bulletin that they've laminated, made all fancy like.
It's
And
in
they have
A2.
I haven't seen that.
It's in the it's by the dining room table on the wall.
Yeah.
A puzzle? Oh, okay, yeah.
It may not necessarily be all updated, but yes, they do have it there.
I know 2, they have one, Haley and Alan have one, and then each of the kids has their own.
Yeah.
Right.
So the goal is to have everybody's hanging up in the cottage somewhere, but that doesn't always happen.
So in addition to the kids having a safety plan, so it's important for us to have a safety plan because we have those times when the trauma gets to us, when the stress gets to us, and so we need to take a breather somehow. And so, so for instance, today I was like trying to get all this stuff ready, and John was like, "Mom, just breathe, just just stop, take a breath, breathe." And so that's always like number 1 on the safety plan. It's just stop, take a breath. It's gonna be okay. So talk to a friend if you have an opportunity. There's a lot of times, I don't know, like you said, sometimes you're alone in the cottage, but really if you can kind of tap out, you've been dealing with this kid for 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then just switching and take a breather in that way. It's not always possible because there's not always more than one staff, but that's always a good way to deal with that. Anything else anybody feels like they want to share about what they would put on their safety plan? Cup of coffee, trip to Sonic.
Sometimes switching out too
Right.
is good for the kid.
Right, that's true too.
So, I mean,
Right.
that'll
Just
break
stop
whatever momentum they have going.
Yeah, because again, like I say, it's a power struggle.
Right.
So if you take away that person that you're struggling with, then it will break that moment for sure. So, what else? Anybody
Yeah, I didn't handle my situation with the Martinez girls on Friday too well.
It's hard. I mean, I'm not, I stand up here and I'm going like, well, this is all you gotta do. You just gotta have a safety plan. It's gonna be great. And
I felt like one of the kids after I went back in the cottage and slammed the door.
It's
I was
hard.
like,
It is very
call
hard.
Heather, I'm done.
Yeah, it's so stressful. That's why Ben in his training was talking about the pro-qual because that stress and the burnout. I mean, it's a real thing. The vicarious trauma. We'll talk about that next week. The compassion fatigue. Talking about just knowing what these kids have been through is very exhausting, and so it's hard. This is a really really hard job. And I know y'all all came to do it because you love kids and you want to help kids and you want to be better. I mean, that's our goal, is we wanted to heal them from this trauma that they've endured. And when they go home or they go to a foster family or they go to an adoptive home, that they leave here better than when they came. That's just our goal. We want to be Christ to them and we want them to be better than when they came. And it's really hard. I mean, they love their parents. They love even when it was terrible, they still love them. It's still hard. Even it's just such a hard life. Is just wrong sometimes. So, we do the best we can, and we try to. And I just want you to recognize when we talk about this that they're not being this way on purpose. It seems like they're being this way on purpose, and maybe they are.
But it's because it's how they learned to live.
Right. This is how they've coped. This is the way their brain has become wired. This is how I deal with this. I gave the example about the earthquake. You missed it.
Oh.
Well, I know in that situation, I think actually, because the girls had mentioned to me that morning that I seemed really laid back and really calm. And so I'm thinking that was just a really big trial day.
Let's see if we can get her on edge. Let's see what we can do to make her not so calm. Right. So,
Well, I don't know if this is being repetitive, but like these kids are used to very chaotic lives, and so they're going to do everything they can to create that because it feels normal to them. And so that's the trauma, is just like, how can I get back to what feels right, even if it's not
what's best?
what you think it should look like. And so it's just a lot of rewiring that has to happen, and it takes a long time. So.
And some kids we've had like Ben and Giselle. They've been here how long?
It was like 4 years, I think.
Right, because Jimmy says they came right when he came, and so Aaron's been here
4 years,
a long time. But some of these kids will come in and be gone 6-9 months. I can't think of any right now we've had.
We've got quite a few who've been here for a long time right now.
But yeah, and then there's some like Maria, who was here, went home, and now it's back. So just think how traumatic that is to think you get to go home and then you end up back here again. So it's a really hard job. Anybody have any questions or anything they want to share? I have some. These don't stay on very good. This is what I brought. I don't know if regular pens are better. I don't know. You can try. Yellow's probably not good. There's green, black, brown, blue, red. Huh?
So, I did overnight for Cottage 8 Friday and Saturday. Those boys do not sleep. Ever. Is that like just a boy thing, or could it be also?
I had all girls. I can't answer that.
It's an anxiety thing.
Okay.
Most of the time. It depends on the kids. Sometimes they just want to stay up and do whatever.
Xavier was the main one who isn't.
But I think a lot of especially for them that weekend, I think a lot of that was anxiety. Because they had a court hearing, or were supposed to have a court hearing last week, and then it didn't happen, and so he was really on edge about finding out information about it, and so I feel like that was probably a lot of why he didn't sleep very good that night.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, it's just the communication. We were talking about open communication. Just the fact that you can go to their case manager and ask a question and find out. So what's going on? Why are they being like this? I think that's really important.
Yeah,
do.
y'all are
And
always
so,
welcome to come on Friday and be like, hey, can you give me a quick rundown? Anything I should know? going into this weekend? Did something happen?
I think I'm still a little confused at who's the case manager for which cottages.
Yes, well, Cottage 3 is also confusing because Martinez girls are all Mercy's, but Cottage 3 overall is Heather's. But right now, Heather doesn't have anybody in Cottage 3, only Mercy does. So it is confusing. But when you think Martinez girls, it's either Mercy or me.
Okay.
She has the older ones.
I have the older two, so.
Okay.
But if you have a question about them overall, like their case or whatever, then you can ask
Okay.
about it. And then Cottage 4 is Heather's.
Cottage 1, Heather's.
Yes.
Cottage 2, Mercy's. Cottage 3, Heather's. Cottage 4, Heather's.
Cottage 5 has Jacob.
Jacob.
6,
Cottage-
7, and 8 are me. And that's it.
And then Mason. So, and foster care is the same. You know all the stuff, so they can come to you. And then, foster families are the same. So, working with them to develop a safety plan for them, their kids, they're supposed to have this training too. I think. How does that work with foster care?
We do it as a part of our trauma-informed care training. So we do safety plans as a part of the licensing process. And additionally, they go over it on their monthly home visits with them.
Right. So yeah, safety plan, like she says, is a fluid thing. So don't say, well, this is your safety plan and this is it. This should last you the whole time you're here. It's something that you can change and alter and go, well, this didn't really work because we couldn't do this, so let's try something else. And just really working with the kids and trying to figure out what's the best, what's going to keep them calm, what's going to calm them down, what's going to.
I think my biggest problem with me dealing with the kids has been because I don't want to add to their trauma, and so I'm scared to death to go too far that way, so I don't go far enough the right way.
Right.
Because I'm not always sure how it's going to affect them in their minds,
As
So-
far as like discipline, as far as.
discipline and trying to talk to them and trying, because I know what it's like to be traumatized at that age, and I don't want to be
Right.
a part of the problem.
Sure.
I want to be a part of the solution.
Sure.
So I find myself kind of backing off from what probably should be being done, So I'm having to break myself and know that structure and everything is exactly what they need.
Right.
And that it's not hurting them to make sure they're structured.
Right. I'm glad you
So-
said that because structure is a big piece
Yeah.
of what they need. Because like I said before, not even ever being told no, not being told when to go to bed, not being told to go do any of that kind of stuff. You can imagine living that and all of a sudden then you have all these rules that you have to follow. That would be really, really hard.
Yeah.
But yet at the same time, it makes you feel safe when you do have that structure.
Right. I guess it would be a lot easier if we could do kids the way my mom and dad did me and, pull me up and
Probably not helpful. So, but it's a hard job. I really appreciate the fact that y'all are willing to do it. Yes, ma'am.
Do the house parents leave notes of what happened throughout the week, or is that something that we go to you about? Because
It depends on the house parents.
Like Madison does some.
I know that
Yeah.
that last weekend, Haley?
Yeah, it's
Is that okay?
Yeah.
She was in there, and so she kind of talked to us before
Mhm.
she left about kind of what went on throughout the week. It was very helpful.
Yeah.
To go to the weekend because I knew, okay, this person got in trouble Tuesday and can't do this, or
Right.
Whatever it was. But I just didn't know if that's something that we can, because it would, I don't know.
Right.
for
But
me,
the problem is that most house parents are off at 8 o'clock on Friday, and most of y'all don't come on until.
Well, they come at 8
But now
now.
it's different, right?
Everybody's
It's
on.
different in the summer than it is during the school year.
So it's technically supposed to happen, whether they talk to you in person or whether they leave you notes.
Yeah.
Either one is supposed to happen, so if it's not happening, you can let me know.
Okay.
And sometimes there's weekends and they're like, I just didn't get to it, but,
Yeah.
so if that doesn't happen and you're on the shift and you're like, I have no idea, like, I feel like there's something that I should know and I don't know, then you can always come talk to me or Heather, or Mercy if she's here, and just be like, what do I need to know?
Okay.
So,
Or you can text Madison.
Yeah.
Madison, if you
Yeah.
Text her, she'll answer most of the time while she's still with her little baby.
Yeah.
And Haley's like in and out. too
Yeah.
sometimes, so.
yeah. were in there like, oh, I didn't get to that, so.
And the Mason is such a different.
Yeah, it's, y'all are very good about communicating from shift to shift, which is a good thing, so.
It's a whole different structure. But those kids are probably, I mean, they're fresh out of it, so it's also probably the hardest for them in a lot of ways, as far as just coming in immediately being taken out. I just think about them coming with nothing. We had some kids come one time that had been in a car wreck, and I can't, one of their siblings was killed, correct? And the mom was in the hospital. I mean, and when they brought them to us, still just the blood on their clothes and stuff. It's just, it's just stuff like that. You're just, okay, let's go over to the commissary and just get you some clean clothes, and, because they didn't have anything. So just the amount of trauma is overwhelming. Yes, Hector.
How deep of a conversation can we have with the kids?
I'll let you handle.
You can listen to whatever they want to tell you. If it starts getting to where you're like, I don't feel comfortable listening to this, then I would go get somebody else, and like I would go get your team lead, and say, hey, this is kind of what we've been talking about, and I don't really feel comfortable hearing all of this alone with this kid. So would you come in there and talk with me, or what do I need to do? But if they open up to you, I never shut them down, because if they're opening up, that's a big thing. And so really it's up to you as far as what you feel comfortable hearing. If they start talking about like sexual abuse that they've endured, that you've never been told, like I know in staffing y'all go over kids and talk about different things that they've said or disclosed. So if you start hearing something that you've never heard before, you need to go get whoever your team lead is and say, this is what's happening. But you're welcome to talk to them.
Kind of like adding on to that though, you don't want to try to get them to tell you anything. And that's not to be like heartless or anything. That's to be like, if a kid tells you something sexual has happened to them, you don't need to go into it to try to like investigate that situation in that moment, because what can happen is that kid could be making a very genuine outcry, but by the time that makes it into the court system, the lawyer for the family is going to have a really good opportunity to use your like you're asking that kid questions as, well, no, that was his staff. That staff put those ideas in their head. And so then you have a potentially dangerous situation that the kid can go back to because the lawyer was able to argue that. And so, like I was an investigator for CPS for the longest time, and that was one of the most frustrating things. That was just like you would hate, like if you had like teachers are mandatory reporters, and sometimes you'd have teachers who would try to like figure out exactly what happened completely and entirely before they file a report, and because of that, that makes it a lot harder to get answers out of the kid that can be held up in court.
It's important, I think, to communicate with the other staff, especially when I'm not there all the time. Like, I've had, maybe one time I've had something disclosed that was really important, and more than once I've had just things that are manipulations.
Right.
They're because I'm new or
Right.
whatever, and they're just trying to manipulate me, and you ladies have an advantage over me because you can pretty much see through when a girl's coming. And the boys are easy to figure out. So it's a lot of times I just, especially if it's a girl, I don't talk to girls alone, period.
Yeah.
I just don't.
That's a good
That's for
point.
my protection.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Zero. I say no.
So that's what I was trying to say, as far as like if something starts being said and you start getting uncomfortable and you're like, I don't need to listen to this, then that's when you go get your team lead and be like, hey, I don't necessarily want to shut down what they're saying, but I don't want to be the one that's doing this alone. And then they can figure out how far you need to ask, what you need to ask, that kind of stuff.
Because sometimes they're just probing to see what can I get away with this guy, or what I'm saying. They're trying to see how far can I go with this particular staff? And they're always, some of the kids, that's just the way they've lived, and they're very, very manipulative and very people savvy.
But so if they're just talking and they're talking about their past, but it's not anything that's like you're not hearing anything about abuse, or they're just telling you like, well, this is what me and my sister used to go. You know, if they're talking about their past and you don't feel like anything is weird or fishy about it, then you can let them talk whatever they want to say. And then that's when you would go in progress notes and be like, hey, we talked about, he told me about they used to go skateboarding, whatever. Just the big thing is kind of like you saying, is just communicating what was said to your team lead in the progress note, that kind of stuff, so that if, like Joe was saying, if for some reason investigation came up, then you could say, well, we had this conversation in this, and it's written in this progress note, type of thing.
Progress notes, big deal, right?
Yes.
That's the case.
Only do them if you feel like them.
Yeah.
Don't listen to Joe.
We're
Okay, so
supposed to do them for every shift, for every child, right?
Right.
Okay.
it didn't have
Well,
to be.
for weekends, it would be like you would do it Friday night, Saturday night, and then if you work Sunday night. You don't have to do it like the Mason does 6 to 2, 2 to 10. You can just do one day's work.
Okay.
Okay, so the Dan Siegel that I mentioned at the first that did a lot of stuff about the brain came up with this idea called the healthy mind platter, which I really liked. So you have a plate. That's pretty good. Of ways to keep your mind healthy. So these are the things that you need in your life to keep you physically healthy and mentally healthy, emotionally healthy. So number one for most of us, sleep time. It's important as a child, it's important as an adult, get the proper amount of sleep. So it's important on the nights that they're struggling to try to help what we can to calm them so they can sleep. It's important to have physical time. I feel like we don't use this enough, right? Just letting them get out on a basketball court, letting them get out, run around, burn. I mean, it's got to burn that energy off. And sitting and doing video games all day long is not getting that energy out. What? Focus time. So especially, I mean, I think like reading, I don't know how many, some of our kids really love to read, some of our kids just really don't like to read, just like regular kids. But having a time where they can focus on an activity like that. Connecting time. So that relational piece, having a person, having a friend, having somebody that they can talk to, whether it's a sibling, if they have a sibling, whether it's a staff, whether they just made friends. Like Justin and Noah, they hang out together all the time. So, they have that connecting piece. Playtime, which is different than physical time. Or it can be the same, but just having a time to play, time to have fun. Downtime. Everybody needs downtime during their day. And then this last one, I didn't know I had to listen to his explanation. It was called time in. And that was a time every day to just kind of reflect over everything that's happened in that day. And so, and this is a good time. This is what I was asking earlier, if you had time to talk with them one-on-one, just kind of sifting through the day and going through the things that have happened to them through the day and sifting through their feelings and the images and the things and the thoughts that they had throughout the day, and just having time to reflect on that is a good way for them to just kind of keep their mind in harmony and trying to work out like that. We provide a safe environment for these kids. We give them food, we give them shelter, we keep them safe, but we also have to figure out a way to care for their minds. And remember these 3 R's. So reflection, relationship, and resilience. I'll spell this right. These kids are so resilient. They've been through so much, and yet they still, a lot of them still come in, they wanna laugh, they wanna play, no matter what they've been through. So we're made for relationship. This is the thing about COVID that has just driven me nuts. I'm just gonna get on my soapbox here for a minute. It's because we're not made to be in isolation. And so the fact that we have just really isolated ourselves, it just really eats at me. Because we're made to be in relationship. And
I'm a hugger, so it's controlling.
me too, absolutely, absolutely. So, in fact, I still do. But anyway, any questions, anything else anybody wants to share?
If anybody wants to hug me before we leave, that's fine. I do not mind. I'm loving it.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, thank y'all so much. Thanks, John, for coming and helping me.